Happy Friday, everyone. Yay, I'm so excited it's Friday. It's been such a long week. And this weekend, the girls are going to be wrestling, and I haven't seen them wrestle in a while, so very excited about that. Tonight's Friday Night Lights, so we will be there too. But last night, I had made a post just because I really had some pictures that I captured and I wanted to post it to Facebook because I look at my memories every single morning. It's actually one of the first things I do. So I wanted to put it on there for memory's sake. And then, as usual, I find writing very cathartic, and I just wrote a little bit about parenting, and I wanted to hop on here really quick to just touch on something. I probably will do podcast episodes on this in the future, and the girls will come on as guests and talk as children to nutty parents like Mike and I. But a few years ago, I had read a book. I don't know, it was maybe 2018 or so, that really changed the way I live my life, if I'm being honest. So it didn't only change my parenting approach, it changed every single relationship I had. It changed me and how I deal with relationships, and period. Period. So it's called Keep Your Love On by Danny Silk, and essentially the book, based on the title, it is that, like, how to keep your love on all the time. And I had been on a journey of learning what love looked like according to God, and reading that book really opened my eyes to a lot of things. And he has a lot of versions of that book. So he has a parenting version, a spouse version, all these things. But I read the original Keep Your Love On. I've read the business one too. Like, I've read all the versions, but Keep Your Love On is really the core message. And then the other ones really are examples of what it would look like. And it really changed the way that I was parenting the girls and how I viewed my relationship with them. Obviously, I am the parent. I am not their friend. Well, let me say this. I am the parent first, but I do want to be their friend. I want to be someone they can talk to, they can open up to, they can talk through things with unashamedly. No, nothing's off the table, because I really feel that's important. Who better to guide you through certain things or to process information than your parents, who love you and want the best for you, but also having an open mind. And one of the things that I've been able to do, thankfully, and I don't know if it's because of my personality or because of the things I've learned along this journey of life, is I have never forgotten what it's like to be a teenager. I've never forgotten what it's like to be that age, how difficult it is, what the peer pressure is like, what it's really like, not the illusions and delusions we give ourselves about how things were when we were younger. And I use that as a point of reference. So like, if one of the girls comes to me to talk about something that seems trivial or drama related, or like, oh, this is just teenage girls being teenage girls, I don't ever say that. To them, it's very valid. And while they are not adults and they haven't experienced a lot of things at their age and what they're going through, it's a big deal. And it kind of shapes you. And there's a lot of things that I went through when I was a teenager that shaped me tremendously. Things that I'm still trying to shake from when I was a teenager. So I'm very aware of that. And again, I don't know if it's just because of my personality or because of things that I've learned along the way, or my desire to have connection with the girls, but it's changed a lot of things. And there was something that I changed before I even read the book, which was I used to yell a lot. I used to spank them when they were little. And I stopped when I left my ex and we left that abusive situation. I committed to being a different person. I committed to being someone who was more soft-spoken, not yelling, whether it's really part of the culture that I'm from, Portuguese and Brazilian. People just yell, they're loud, you know, and especially Portuguese, like, you know, Europeans in general, sometimes they're talking, you think they're yelling at each other and they're not. It's just the way they talk. I know this, and I speak, you know, because I speak the language, I can understand, but as someone from a different language, you're thinking these people are yelling at each other and they're just not. But I wanted to change that. I didn't want that anymore. It wasn't good for me, and I didn't feel it would be good for the girls. So I changed that. And I also changed the whole spanking. No more spanking, no more hitting, no more punishing in that way. And so that was something that came before I even read the books. Then when I read that book, and mind you, this book is like a book based on biblical principles, and it completely made sense to me. And with the encounter I had with God and what I was learning about God, it just all clicked for me. So I changed a lot of things, and one of the things that I changed was how I looked at discipline, because a lot of times people look at discipline and they use it as a synonym with punishment. But discipline and punishment are not synonyms. Discipline is actually related to teaching and guiding. And what I did was every time something would happen with the girls, they'd make a mistake, or they weren't listening to me, or they were, you know, being disrespectful, or whatever the case is, I would use that as an opportunity to discipline, to teach, to guide, to encourage, to educate. And it's made a big difference. So in my house, I think to the girls, sometimes punishment looks like long conversations with mommy, because we will sit and we will have conversations, and I will ask you lots of questions. And I don't know is not a valid response. We need to be articulate. We need to be able to answer questions, because if you did something, you feel a certain way or whatever, it's not just by chance. There's a reason for it. And in order for me to help you, I need to know what that is. So we press, we ask questions, we get to the bottom of it, we talk, we have discussions. Sometimes we pray, sometimes we don't. It all depends what's going on. And then I read a book by Danny Silk too, several years later. I think this now was 2018 or 2019 when he came out with his book Unpunishable. I think 2019. Maybe, I don't know. I think maybe 2020. I don't know. He came out with a book called Unpunishable. And that's what really solidified it for me, because while I was already implementing the things that he even talks about in Unpunishable, I didn't really have words for it. I didn't understand why I was doing it. But it's exactly that. It's the reality of the situation is when we look at God, God does not punish people. You know what punishes people? Their sin, their error, their poor choices. That punishes people, not God. It is the error of our ways, the consequences that we face by not listening or taking direction from our Heavenly Father, from not using the wisdom that He's given us. That is what punishes us. It's not God coming and punishing. A lot of times we are going through struggles and we equate things that we're going through as like, oh, God just wants to teach me a lesson. Listen, yes, God is your Father and He wants to teach you a lesson. He wants to guide you. He wants to lead you. But He's not going to, He doesn't wait for you to be dumb and make mistakes for Him to do that. He's doing that all the time, every day. So before you're faced with a situation, you need to ask him, what should I do? How should I react? What should I say? How should I proceed? And he will guide you, and he will lead you, and he will give you wisdom. A lot of times what we're facing is not punishment from God, but it is punishment from our wrongdoings. And that could be because of a mistake, because of ignorance, or because we did something stupid on purpose. You know, there's lots of different ways for wrongdoing, but this is why sin brings death. God is a God of life. He planted the tree of life, and that's the one he wanted us to eat from. And there was a tree of good and evil, and that one wasn't the best one for us, but we ate it, and we continue to eat it today because we're so concerned with right and wrong over life. And it shows in many different ways. So what I have always done, and I can't say I've always done this. I've always tried my best to focus on keeping connection with the girls, having relationship with the girls, having open dialogue, communication, guiding, teaching, protecting, always looking out for their best interest, always moving in the direction of love. So we don't celebrate wrongdoing. We don't celebrate lies. We celebrate righteousness and goodness. We guide and we hope, but in the end, I am not responsible for their choices. They are responsible for their choices. They're teenagers now. When they're little kids, some would say, no, they still are because they're under 18 and I'm responsible as their parent for their choices. And yes, legally I am. But I know that really they are responsible. They understand what they're doing. They know very well what they're doing. And they've been, in many cases, equipped and empowered with what they need to make a good decision. And if they choose to make a bad decision, that's on them. That's not on me. And that brings me to the last thing I want to talk about, which is a lot of times when I have reacted harshly, I kind of lose it or whatever the case is. Not every time, because kids sometimes do things that's like, what in the world? But there's a lot of times where I have to check myself and say, does this really bother me? Or is what I'm worried about more about what others will think of this? How others will react to this? Will others judge me for this? And I'm telling you that there are times where I'm only bothered by something because of the perception it may leave for someone else, not for the reality and the truth of the situation. So that's why there's things that I have come to. That's why there's decisions I have made. Because when I know the truth and I know the reality and I'm okay with it, I have to not be bothered by what I think people are going to say, what people are going to think, how people are going to judge, or what it's going to look like. Because unfortunately, the culture that I was raised in within the church was very much built on perceptions and what it looks like. People were doing awful things, being horrible people, bullying left and right. I grew up in the church. I was in church like 6 days a week. I barely participated in any high school activities because I was in church all the time. And I experienced bullying in church, not at school. I mean, I did in school. I'm not going to lie. In 7th grade, I experienced bullying. But then it was fine. Then it was over. It was just like silly stuff. But like most of the bullying I experienced was from church. And I knew what was going on. Like, kids, we all know what we're doing, but everyone lies to the adults and everyone pretends things are a certain way. And a lot of times, there were things that were being done just so that the perception could appear that things were holy and things were right, but that's not really what was happening. It was just all pretend. It was all for show. And in the end now, a lot of the people I grew up with, like most of us are divorced. Like so many people have left the faith. And some in dramatic ways, like you would never guess they grew up in the same place I did, because our beliefs are so incredibly different right now. And that's because of the hypocrisy, the double-mindedness, and the lies. Because when you know something's a lie, you know it. You can pretend it's not a lie all you want, but you know what it does? It affects you mentally so bad. People always talk about the spiritual impacts of lying and living a double life, but let me tell you something. It doesn't just affect you spiritually and emotionally. It affects you mentally as well, and it will drive you crazy, and it will build thought processes and beliefs that are completely destructive because they don't know what it is to live in honesty and truth. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so big into authenticity, and I'm sharing this with you guys. Because when your child is brought up being lied to or being forced to lie or hide realities, it does something to them. And they will grow up with those habits. And it doesn't lead to anything good. Because when you teach someone that you hide bad things from people, you do what I did. And I'm not saying that's my case when I was growing up. I'm just saying I hid lots of things from people, from myself, from God. It was a learned behavior. Pretending is the name of the game for this game of Christianity sometimes. Like, let's just be for real. When you want to talk about why people, big old names fall and you find out they did like the craziest things in the world and they had this secret life and you're like, how, why, when? I mean, that is the kingdom we have built as evangelicals, unfortunately. And it's showing in culture today because the hypocrisy is crazy. Some of the most horrid comments I see online come out of the mouth of Christians. Some of them, like online warriors, destruction with words. I mean, I have been killed with words from Christians. It's insane. And this is learned behavior. Learned behaviors. That's why I don't even like. You have to realize that it's not personal and there's reasons people are like that. I grew up in an environment that produces that kind of nonsense. There's no love. It's just condemnation. It's just judgment. It's just, holiness isn't something within. It's something you do. And when you believe that, it creates that kind of culture. And I didn't want my daughters to be raised that way because I saw what it did to me and I saw what it did to those who I grew up with. I wanted them to know what it looked like to be loved properly, to be respected. I'll just leave it at that. And so I believe, this is the last thing because I have to go, but I believe that children deserve respect. I think this thing of respect is a one way between children and parents is utter nonsense. It's not biblical at all. Children are human beings and they deserve respect. They're not as intelligent. They're not as experienced. They're not as wise. They're not as knowledgeable as adults. Yes. That doesn't mean they don't deserve respect and honor. They do. And that's one of the things that I had to change about myself, was making sure that when I was raising my daughters, whether they were 10 or now 17, that they were experiencing respect at home, so that when they're older and with relationships, or even now with school, in school, in high school, they know how to identify whether they're being respected or being used as a doormat, or being disrespected. They needed to know what love looked like, because I didn't. I didn't believe love, like 1 Corinthians 13, existed. Even though I believed in the Bible, didn't believe it. And there's reasons for that. And I wanted my daughters to grow up never uttering that, never saying, no, I don't know what love looks like. No, these girls know what love looks like. And that's one thing, like I'm going to bring them on the podcast one day. I'll talk to them, not tell them any questions. And we'll just have a conversation, and they can truthfully answer. So we'll see if my take on things is the same as theirs. But I have done everything I can that they can say, I grew up being loved and respected, and they know what that looks like. I mean, you know, I'm very proud of Anna because she's had relationships that were not respectful. And I didn't have to be the one to say, I don't like that. I don't think that's good. I don't know. She came to me and said, this is what's happening. I don't think it's good. What do you think? And she made the decision that she had to make for herself, even though it was hard. And that's, to me, like, that's what I wanted, and I wanted to demonstrate it. If kids are not receiving respect from their parents, how in the world do we think and expect that they're going to demand respect from others? Not demand respect, but recognize respect or disrespect. Because if their parents are disrespecting them, they're going to think that's normal. They're going to trust people who disrespect them. They're going to tolerate it. They're going to make excuses for it. Not here. Not in my house. So it's not always been easy to parent this way, and you have to let go of control. And I was a big control freak, and in some ways I can still be, you know, it still pops up. I'm not perfect at all. Perceptions, the desire to be perceived a certain way pops up. That's just normal for everyone, but that's gotta let the ego aside and think about my kids and raising them so they can be healthy adults. Ego can't be a factor. So it's not always easy, but it's possible. And it's worth it. So worth it. So that's what I wanted to share today. If you guys have any questions, like you're like, Andrew, you're crazy, I don't agree with this, please explain this more to me, or I don't understand what you meant by this, or, you know, can you give me an example of this? You know, you said this, can you give me an example of what that looks like? I'm more than happy to answer questions. I don't expect everyone to agree with me. As a matter of fact, I know people don't agree with me. But I think the proof is in the pudding. But like I mentioned yesterday in my post, I can't really say I know that it works, because we won't know until the girls are adults and off on their own, because that's really where the test will be. How will they be when they're on their own and by themselves? Will they go off the rails like a lot of kids who are sheltered do? Or because they had the freedoms to make choices on their own, they won't be so inclined to go crazy because the choices they made were theirs and not mine when they were younger. So, yeah, I don't, you know, I've spoken to parents. My experience with my girls is very different from most people. Like, I don't have rebellious teenagers. But then again, I probably allow things that some people don't. But in return, I have daughters who tell me everything. So I'd rather have that, because I'd rather know what's going on than to get fake kids in my house and not know what's going on under my own roof. I know what's going on under my own roof. So hold on, Ricky, I'm seeing your comment. Yeah, I mean, being a parent is so hard, right? And in the end, everyone just does the best that they possibly can. And we've all been dealt hands, and we all know what we know. And that's why I have a lot of compassion too, and, you know, understanding for all different parenting. So actually, I forgot the name of the show that the Mills were in. But the Mills were on a show that had to do with parenting styles. And I thought it was really interesting, the different parenting styles and the effect they had on their kids and just the perceptions that it gave. It's definitely not easy, but this route that I've taken, also not easy, requires to let go of ego like crazy. But in the end, I think it's worth it. And I think as parents, we all need to respect each other. I have a lot of kids who come over the house all the time, and, you know, gotta respect the parents, and however, you know, whatever they feel, whatever they approve of, whatever they like if they have a particular rule in my house, they're going to have that rule too. So, yeah, definitely not easy, but we all see when they're adults. And for me, relationship is the most important. Communication is important. When they have a hard time, I don't ever want them to hesitate to come to me. I will do my best all the time. I'm their biggest cheerleader. I'm their biggest fan. I know I brag on my girls, about my girls all the time, and I do it unashamedly. Will never regret it. Will not apologize for it. If you don't like it, you can unfriend me and go follow one of my other pages. But yeah, I'm very proud of who they've become. We have gone through a lot in this life to and to be where we're at. Like we're in this middle lane that all of us in this house, I think sometimes we feel a little out of place, because we are a blended family. And so Mike and I have both been divorced, and we both came from religious upbringings. And based on what the girls have come out of, there is a certain perception of what kids of divorced parents look like, behave, are, their struggles or difficulties. And we're not like that. So it's very hard sometimes to relate to people who have gone through what we've gone through, because they're on one of, you know, a lot of times the assumptions are, you know, things are a mess, they're so bad, the kids are emotionally damaged. And, you know, we've had to deal with courts and therapists and stuff like that. And, you know, the consensus is like, there is actually absolutely no negative impact on these girls from the divorce. The only negative impact is that we are stalked and harassed on a very frequent basis. But other than that, considering all that, like, we're doing great, you know? And, but we're also not like, I don't know, we're just like, we're not on the two extremes. So sometimes it's really hard, because both Mike and I are really good at seeing things from different perspectives. So we see both sides to a lot of things, and we try our best not to control or to expect things that, like, if I believe something, you don't need to believe it. Like, I really don't. Mike and I don't agree on everything we believe. So if Mike and I don't agree, why would you and I agree? And same thing for the girls. Like, just because I believe something doesn't mean the girls have to believe it. And I'm not going to love them less if they believe differently than I do. Now, there's some beliefs that I feel are very value driven. And as long as they have the value, that's what I care about. And I think that there are values that are very aligned with God and Christianity, whether someone believes in that or not. That's a very different view from a lot of evangelicals. But a lot of that has informed how I parent, how I guide, how I lead them, how I am with their, with their friends and all of that. But yeah, I just wanted to share that with you guys, especially if anyone out there has younger kids and you're just like, if you're like me, like, who entrusted me to raise little humans? Like, I don't know what I'm doing, guys. Like, I'm sharing this with you, but like, in all honesty, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just doing the best that I can, what I know with what I know, doing what I know with what I know. Because I don't know what I don't know. I recognize that. And I will say this, what works for one kid doesn't work for all. Anna and Alicia are parented in two very different ways because Anna is very, very different from Alicia. They're two very different kids and they get parented differently. The expectations of both of them are different. It's very much geared to their skills and talents. In terms of not values, but like who they are as people, I think my standard of that is the same for both of them. How they express that, however, is different. I try not to put that in a box because it looks different for different people. People express things. Like, personality really is an expression of who you are. So for example, someone who tends to be snippy or itchy, but with a B, let's just put it that way, that's not a personality type. Like, don't come and tell me that's your personality. Because what you're telling me is that who you are as a person is not very nice. That's not who you are. It may be a reaction or a symptom to something that needs to be worked on maybe, but that's not your personality type. That's how you've chosen to deal with things. Having an attitude, being, I don't know, like, I don't even know what the word is, but you have to realize that's not your personality. Your personality is an expression of who you are. So who do you want to be? That you get to choose. You were created in the image of God to reflect him. That's what my book's going to be about. But as adults, you have the opportunity to choose who you want to be. You can choose whether you reflect God or not. You can choose who you want to be. So who do you want to be? It's that simple. And that's really what I've taught the girls is, who do you want to be? Who do you want to be known as? Like with Anna, with her wrestling, she came short last state and she got 4th place. She was going for 1st. That was a big blow to her. And while being fourth in the state seems like great, and it is, to me, it's absolutely phenomenal. To her, it wasn't good enough. But she's learned a lot of lessons since then. One of the big ones is you can have a title, you can be a state champ and be a horrid person, be horrible, just be someone no one wants to be around. And what's the point? That's such a lonely place to be. Why be a champ, but be a horrible person that no one wants to be around, no one wants to learn from, no one wants to emulate? Being a good person totally outweighs that. And thankfully, that's a lesson that Anna's learned. But she had the freedom to learn that in this house. She struggled a lot. She went through a lot of emotions. She had a lot of lectures, a lot of talks from me. But she's also had a lot of support at school by her administrators, and they've talked to her and they've walked her through things and they've guided her. And when I read her college essay, it moved me because I realized, you know what, actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to ask her if I can share her college essay with you guys, because I think it's a beautiful reflection of how important it is to discipline your kids in the right way, where discipline is not punishment, but it's guiding, it's teaching, it's leading. Because when you do it, your kids listen. You think they're not listening, but they are. And I learned that in her college essay, where she basically learned what success was. She thought success was winning that title. And she wound up learning, in essence, this is in my words, but she wound up learning that success is being a good person. It's being someone people can come to, being a leader that is, you know, empathetic and compassionate. And she's made her mistakes. Anna is not perfect. Those of you who know Anna, you know, like, that girl can, oh my goodness, rein her in sometimes. And, you know, so I've tried to teach her that about personality. Okay, that's not your personality. You know, your personality needs to reflect who you are. So who do you want to be? You need to make sure that's what you're reflecting. So she learned that. And it was a really proud moment. She was like, hey, I'm writing my college essay. If I write it, can you look at it? Can you edit it for me and stuff? Because she knows I like to write. So it was pretty awesome to read what she wrote. Very moving for me as a mom. Very proud moment as a mom. So yeah. So if you have little kids, it's a perfect time to reflect on, because once they're teenagers, it's kind of difficult and hard to change an approach. But it's possible, and you may save your relationship if you do. But especially if you have younger kids and you're like, who let me raise these kids? I encourage you to read that book, Keep Your Love On and Unpunishable. Both of those in that order. So read Keep Your Love On first, and then read Unpunishable. And if you're in ministry, if you're in leadership, if you're, you know, anything like that, you know, even just as a Christian, to be honest, those books they changed my life. They changed my life. Another statement that's very controversial to evangelicals, to say that a book other than the Bible changed my life. The Bible changed my life. God changed my life. This book changed my life. Like, God uses all these different things to change people, to bring truth to people. So, I encourage you to really read those books. Like, I'd rather you read those books than my book, to be honest. Like, if you're going to have to pick, like, by the way, guys, check this out. I got the proof of my book. Oh my gosh, I love it so much. Makes me so happy. My last book I was not very proud of, for lots of different reasons. But this one, it's small. You see, guys, how small it is? It's small. Not big at all. Like, very easy read. Look at this. Very easy read. But there's a lot of gold in here. But if you had to, like, I can only buy one book, go read Keep Your Love On before you read this, because that's like it's just so simple but life-changing, in my opinion. All right, so I'll let you guys go for the day. Happy Friday. I'm so happy it's Friday this week. We didn't used to have a lot of stuff going on, but now we have so many things going on, and I so look forward to the weekends. And this year, Anna's last year, we will look forward to the weekends a lot, just because of how exciting it is. But yeah. All right, guys, have a wonderful day. Bye.